At this point, guys, I really might have to start putting out a video a day in order to keep up with all this stuff because there's just so much going on. So here's what happened today. Ben Shapiro went and spoke at the Jewish Leadership Conference. And during that segment, somebody asked him a question about Nick Fuentes, who he's currently beefing with. And he just downright let him have it. So let's go ahead and play that and listen to what Ben Shapiro had to say about Nick Fuentes.
You put your finger on something important. You say, these people, Nick Fuentes and Tate and Andrew Tate, they're speaking into the lives of young men in a way that normie conservatives are not. So now let's ask ourselves the question, as Jews and as Americans, what actually could Jewish ideas leadership say to young men and to young women? What can Jewish ideas actually do to renew, replenish, revitalize this society that we care so much about?
So, I really think that biblical ideas, and here I say they're Jewish ideas, but they were extended through Christianity as well. But, the sort of very Jewish idea that you have a role and a responsibility in the world, and you need to go do that in a muscular way, that actually Judaism values the idea that you're supposed to forge forth into the world and you have moral duties that you're supposed to do every single day. These are things that you're required to do every single day, and that you're a loser if you don't. Really, you're a loser and you're making your life worse. Okay, we shouldn't be shy about this. I think that we're all too shy about this sort of stuff with young men particularly. We say, if you choose not to, that's one. If you choose, no. Your life will be worse and you will be a loser if you don't do these things that are going to make your life better. And again, I speak to young men all the time. And the reality is if they don't hear that message, then you're not speaking it proudly enough. And I think that's the mistake that, frankly, people in the pro-Israel community make all the time, is sort of an apologetic approach to the way that they're pro-Israel, or people in the Jewish community speak about anti-Semitism. It's almost an apology for, can't we just be tolerated? Saying, no, there's an actual value system. That value system actually coincides with traditional Americanism. And that gives you something to do. If you listen to Nick Fuentes, you are likely to be a loser. He is a loser. He is a basement-dwelling, ridiculous loser who spends his days ranting on the internet to a bunch of other basement dwellers. Don't be one of those people. You don't have to be that.
Okay, now whether you agree with Nick Fuentes or don't, I made it very clear on this channel that there's a lot that Nick Fuentes says that I do not agree with. Also, never said I was a fan of Nick Fuentes, and I'm definitely not. I just cover the news. I think it's hilarious how when you cover people start going in the comments and saying, oh, you're a fan of him, like you're weird. No, I never said that. I just cover the news. Calm down. But anyway, the bottom line is, I do think that what Ben Shapiro is saying is the wrong message. It's the wrong way to go about it, because you're just saying, if you listen to Nick Fuentes, you're probably a loser. You're probably a basement dwelling loser just like him. But what they don't understand is that him saying things like that and that type of rhetoric is what's driving these young Gen Z men to Nick Fuentes, because there's already this kind of thing where, young men are losers and aren't doing anything and feel, I don't know. Let me think. What's the best way I can explain this? It's like, and this is coming from my Gen Z family member that I told you guys in the last video, who told me why he likes Nick Fuentes and listens to him, right? It's like, you have people who are wealthy and older, whether they're Generation X or millennial, like Ben Shapiro, very wealthy. And he's coming out and he's making fun of these young dudes who live in the basement with their parents and can't really get a good job or whatever's going on. And what these young Gen Z men are saying is, I'm not lazy. I work hard. Life just got harder. Life was easier for you guys back then. Unfortunately for us, life is harder. The cost of living has gone up dramatically. You got inflation. The jobs aren't paying as well as like how much it costs to live. Rents are out of control. Buying a home is out of control. Everything's just ridiculously expensive. And so these young men are fighting back against people who make fun of them. And they're like, hey, I'm doing everything that I possibly can, and I'm still not in a situation where I can make a better life for myself or even have any hope of living in the American dream. And now I have these a-holes and jerks like Ben Shapiro telling me that I'm a basement dwelling loser when I'm doing the best that I can. That is the gist, or what my understanding from my conversation with my Gen Z family member who was a fan of Nick Fuentes. But I do think that that's the bad way to go about it. If you listen to Nick Fuentes, you're a loser. You're basically like what does that do? What does that actually do to say things like that? I just don't think that that's the way to go about it. And I don't think Ben Shapiro's really trying to accomplish anything here. I just think he doesn't like Nick Fuentes, so he just wanted to say that. But I don't think that's the good message. It's just going to make young men hate you more by saying stuff like that. Like, I think there's a clip where Nick Fuentes actually says, like, what's wrong with living in the basement with your mom? Like, yeah, I live in the, he said something like that. Like, yeah, I record in my basement, and what's the problem with that? You know what I mean? It was like that whole kind of thing. Let's keep going.
You can actually go get a job. You can get married. You can have a girlfriend. You can actually, make something of yourself in this world. And it was really funny. There's one point where actually Tucker made some sort of disparaging reference to Fuentes about this.
Yeah, but we do have to be fair. It is hard to, for these young men, if you just look at the statistics, I'm not giving my opinion. I'm just telling you guys what I've read. Okay. If you look at the statistics, a lot of men are not getting any action from women. A lot of them are not. That's a fact. Go look it up. A lot of men are not really getting into relationships, and a lot of men are struggling to get a job that will actually lead them to something somewhere in life. Like, a lot of men are just kind of going through the motions. They're not living the life that they wanted or that they thought that they would have, and a lot of them don't see hope for the future. And the worst thing you could do is crap on those men or say dumb things like, who says that you can't, get married and have a wife and have kids and have a great job and all that? A lot of people in that demographic do not see a path to that. And that's why they're leaning more towards a Nick Fuentes than somebody like a Ben Shapiro, who definitely is an elitist and carries himself like he thinks he's better than people. Think about it. This guy is a lawyer. Isn't that what he was? I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure he was a lawyer. This guy was like a lawyer. Then he became a content creator. He just strikes you as one of those guys who's just always had money, doesn't really know what it's like to struggle. I bet you if you looked up his background, probably never struggled in his life. So it's just kind of hard for people to listen to people like that. You know what I mean? Like, he really is the absolute worst messenger to give this message.
When he was doing an interview with another delightful person, Candace Owens, and in the middle of this interview, he sort of made a disparaging remark about Fuentes, and Fuentes went right back at him and said, you're insulting the basement dwellers, Tucker. Those are your people. Like, you said they were your people, but actually you scorn them. Here's the thing. Nobody should scorn people who are unsuccessful in life when they don't know better. But it's our job to teach them to know better, right? It is not good. If you listen to Nick Fuentes, there is no way your life gets markedly better. In fact, it gets markedly worse. If you listen to the life prescriptions of Andrew Tate, your life will get worse.
They're not listening to, he's just so out of touch here because they're not listening to Andrew Tate or Nick Fuentes, because whatever he just said, like that's not why they're listening to him. Like, they're listening to them because they can relate to them. It's not about, I want to listen to them and they're going to get me somewhere. It's, this person online understands where I'm coming from and I can relate to them. And I like what he has to say. This is what Ben Shapiro needs to understand. It's the other way around. It's not, you shouldn't listen to them. You shouldn't listen to this person. He's terrible. He's going to make you lose. No. He's going to make you a loser. No. That guy, Ben Shapiro, Nick Fuentes and Andrew Tate, they were the mouthpiece of men. They were speaking on how men already feel, young men. Andrew Tate's in the same boat. A lot of young men already felt this way, but now they go online and they see somebody who's not afraid and is articulate enough to explain exactly how all these young men feel in a way that they can't quite articulate it. That's why these guys blow up and become popular. Like, this isn't something new. This is how people already feel, and he's their mouthpiece. That's really all it is.
Better. You will end up alone, joyless, with no purpose in life. You will end up not being.
A lot of them are already alone, joyless, with no purpose in life. That's why they like Nick Fuentes. That's what you don't get that. A lot of them are already in that situation, if we're being honest. They really are. And because they're in that situation, they blame people, whether it's right or wrong, they blame people for being in that situation. And this guy is able to articulate that and place that blame where they feel it needs to go. It's not your fault you're in this situation. It's the government. It's not your fault you're in this situation. It's the Democrats or the Republicans or the oligarchs or the corruption. Like that. That's what it is. So guess we'll play the last 10 seconds. What do you got to say?
Very wealthy. You'll have made him wealthy by giving him your money, by being grifted upon. And if we don't make that aggressive case on behalf of our own values, and yes, against those values, and not in a shy way, then we deserve to lose.
All right, so yeah, I just think he's out of touch. I mean, I gave my opinion. This guy is so ridiculously out of touch. It's crazy. This is why his viewership is declining. This is why his little network, the Daily Wire, is dying. Like, these guys are going to decline. They're going to get to a point where they decline so much they're going to be like irrelevant. Like, he's just going to have to start going on like news networks in order to stay relevant at this point. Like, it's really going to get to that point. Meanwhile, you're going to have all these new guys rising up like Nick Fuentes, who are going to continue to get more viewership and different things like that. But yeah, just the most out of touch guy ever, just ridiculous. But he's the type of guy you can't tell anything. So it's not like he's going to actually like try and learn, like, because my whole thing is this, right? I look at it differently than him. Of course, Nick Fuentes has said some terrible things. There's plenty of content creators who said terrible things. But if they're popular, my whole thing is I don't like to discount how people feel. Because people are entitled to how they feel. And I'm not one of those people who thinks everybody's an idiot but me. Like him. Like, that's how he thinks. I'm the only smart guy. Everybody else is an idiot. I don't think like that. I think like, okay. I think critically. I'm like, this Nick Fuentes guy has said some stuff that I do not agree with at all. He said some wild stuff. Is he trolling or does he really mean that? Because it's just hard for me to believe that most regular decent people really believe in some of that stuff that he has said. So first, my question becomes, is this guy trolling? I think he might be trolling. Okay, let's say he's not. Forget it. Maybe he's not trolling. Okay, why do all these young men like this dude? That becomes my new question. Now I have to investigate and figure out, why do all these young men like this dude? And then once I figure that out, instead of chastising them for how they feel or saying you're horrible, you're racist, you're disgusting, you're evil, instead of saying all that stuff, now I say, okay, great. Now that I understand where you all are coming from, now I have a better picture of why you guys like him, and we could go from there. Now I can explain to you, well, hey, have you ever considered this? Have you ever considered that? And then you kind of go from there. In my opinion, that's the way to go, because at the end of the day, let's be real. You're not changing anybody's opinions. You're just not. The best thing you could do is do the best you can, have conversations. Maybe if you really feel that this person is terrible, evil, doesn't know what they're doing, then you go and actually debate them and challenge them. But you're not going to change how people think. That's why I don't really get into that stuff. Like, people can support whoever they want, because what am I going to do? I'm not going to change their opinion. What's the point? I'm better off figuring out why and then kind of rationalizing it. Because I don't think that most of the people, this is just my opinion, I do not think that most of the people who watch Nick Fuentes, or maybe some of these other people who are really like rash like he is, I don't think these people strictly watch him because they want to hear the awful things. I just don't. I think the awful things come with it, and they're like, okay, don't really agree with that. But then he says the other stuff that they do like. You know what I mean? That's what I think. And I think that's the other problem too with this whole stuff is I actually went and I watched an entire Nick Fuentes live stream because I'm like, I just want to see what this guy's about. And I feel like most of the clips online that you might see is Nick Fuentes, saying awful, crazy, horrible things. Like, they'll take like a 20-second clip or whatever. But if you watch an entire live stream and you really just kind of sit there, you kind of get it. You're like, okay, I can kind of see why a lot of young men will gravitate to this. I really can, especially since this guy is also really relatable. Ben Shapiro is not relatable to these young men. Rich lawyer who grew up privileged, who never struggled, who's a multi-millionaire. No young Gen Z man is going to relate to that. But they are going to relate to the young college-looking kid who's streaming from mommy's basement. They're going to relate to that and speaking on, the issues that they care about. That's just my opinion. So anyway, that's today's video. As always, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.